Welcome to the Retiring Canada podcast, where our mission is to educate and empower you to make the most informed, rational, and productive financial decisions. Hosted by certified financial planner, author, and chartered investment manager Michael Isbister, you'll go behind the scenes to uncover the tips and strategies to help you invest smarter, optimize your retirement income, and reduce the amount of tax you pay. Michael is an investment advisor with Fundamental Wealth, a trade name of Harbourfront Wealth Management, an IROC dealer. And now, here's your host, Michael Isbister.
Hello everyone, and welcome again to the Retiring Canada podcast. In today's episode, we're going to discuss downsizing in retirement. Specifically, I'm going to chat about the reasons retirees downsize, the common factors to consider regardless of your reasoning, real-world scenarios we have helped with in the past, the importance of taking your time, and lastly, as always, a few action items for you to consider. Now, when I say downsizing in retirement, I'm referring to downsizing your home. Whether that be a physical reduction in your actual square footage, or perhaps moving regions or provinces where you get a little more bang for your buck per square foot when you buy a home. For some retirees, this choice may be driven by a financial motive. Selling a home can free up equity and value that can be directed to creating a retirement income, while others think of downsizing as a way to simplify their lives, declutter and get rid of old stuff, move closer to family, or perhaps reduce the physical burden of maintenance and upkeep of a traditional detached family home. Whichever camp you find yourself in, whether it be freeing up cash flow for retirement income or the desire to simplify, there are some commonalities you'll want to be aware of that could have an impact on your decision. Furthermore, you should have an investment game plan in place if your move ends up freeing up cash to invest into your retirement nest egg. So the first common consideration is tax. Now, for most people listening, you likely won't need to worry about tax considerations when selling your home. In Canada, we have the ability to take advantage of the primary residence exemption, which simply put means you don't have to pay tax when you sell your home. However, for those of you who own a vacation home or cottage, you'll want to take extra care when it comes time to selling and claiming this exemption. If you own multiple properties, you may have the ability to claim the primary residence exemption against one of these properties, assuming they both qualify. In short, you may be able to choose which property will be the most tax advantageous to declare as your primary. I recently had a client in this exact scenario. He and his wife own a modest home they purchased for around $100,000 in the 80s, now worth over $400,000 today. In the 90s, they purchased a cottage property for around $150,000, did some upgrades over time, and today that cottage is valued a little over $1 million. Now, a lot of this growth of the cottage property is due to the growth we've seen in real estate experience across Canada, in addition to the very desirable location of their cottage. Now, based on their purchase prices and adjusted cost bases, it makes more sense for them to claim their cottage as their primary residence to help shelter that massive growth from tax. Now, there is quite a bit of nuance that goes into this decision, including the dates both properties were purchased and years of overlap, understanding if the property was rented during this time, does it still qualify, and more. Now, after getting these clients well equipped to make a decision, I still suggested they meet with their tax accountant to ensure all their ducks were in a row and that they filed correctly. And I suggest you do the same as well if you find yourself in this scenario. Next consideration when it comes to downsizing is cost. Between real estate, legal, land transfer costs, and other closing costs, there could be a substantial bill coming your way when you finally ink the deal. It will be crucial to know what these costs will be and how they impact the decisions you make next. Over and above the closing costs, there may be moving or storage costs that could put further strain on what's left over. In the case where you still carry a small amount of mortgage debt on a property, be sure to know the nuances and potential penalties of paying off that liability early. Next, as we start to look past the numbers, you have to consider what is the right size for you. Will you be hosting guests? Is there enough room for all your stuff, or is your plan to declutter and get rid of some stuff? Do you have grandkids and want to, have a place for them to mess about? Is there room for your hobbies or to do exercise? Or, do you need a yard for your dog to roam about? You will know what's right for you, but be sure to run these scenarios through your mind and really try to conceptualize what it will look like and feel like. In line with the right size of space is to also forecast what things may look like as you age. Making this switch to begin with is, a little bit overwhelming for some, and chances are you may want this to be your last move. If that's the case, you need to think about mobility and location to essential services like grocery stores. There may be a time where stairs may be an issue, or perhaps night driving isn't suitable anymore. It may seem strange to some to think about these kinds of things in advance, but for most listening who have watched and helped their parents age, you know how important this kind of planning is to aging in place. I have to say, one of my best friends, same age as me, is already thinking about this. He and his wife built a beautiful home and constructed it with the intent of this place being their truly forever home. He is an engineer, so it would make sense if you met him. And no offense to engineers out there who are listening, but if you listen to his logic, you would probably agree. And I just hope for his sake and for people think like that there's some robots in the future that will cut his grass and shovel his snow and do all these things so that they can continue to age in place. Anyway, another consideration when downsizing is renting rather than owning. Now, for most listening who have owned a home their entire lives, the thought of renting seems completely out of the question. But there are some scenarios where you may want to consider this. First off, if you find yourself relocating to another city or province, it would be wise to live in that city for a few months before putting down roots. It's cheaper to pay the moving company again than it is to pay the closing costs on a property in an area that you no longer want to call home. Second, maybe you want the flexibility for a few years, assuming you're in good health. Not being tied down to a property does have its perks, but I understand completely that stability around retirement age is really the goal. Regardless, I think weighing the pros and cons of owning and renting is worth a thought. The last consideration is making an overall plan. Here are some common scenarios I come across with retirees and this decision. First off, many retirees don't want to be rushed out of their house as they downsize or, change to a new property. If that's the case, there may be some financial constraints that could make this a juggling act. Now, in a recent scenario, I had a client search for a new property and make an offer before even listing their existing property. Once their offer was accepted, the rush was on to get their existing home listed and sold. In their case, this worked out pretty well. They made an offer on the condo and pushed the possession date back 60 days. They then listed and sold their home and negotiated a possession date 14 days after they got possession of their condo, giving them 2 weeks to move in. However, they had to carry 2 properties simultaneously for this period. Now, for these clients, they had a substantial non-registered holding account where there was very minimal capital gains attached, so they were able to self-fund the property purchase without traditional financing. However, you may find yourself with a substantial retirement nest egg, but it's completely trapped in a fully taxable RRSP or LIRA. If this is the case, you may need to consider bridge financing or negotiating property conditions between your purchase and sale that would give you time to move between properties as seamlessly as possible. Now, for other retirees, a downsize might represent a substantial amount of additional cash left over after the new property is purchased. If this is the case, understanding the best accounts to utilize and optimal investments to use in each of those accounts will help to secure your retirement, optimize your income, and minimize your taxes. Now, making the move from a house that you've created years of memories in, really isn't an easy decision. And in my experience advising clients, it can take years from concept to reality. Good planning takes time. And with that, you can ensure a well thought out life transition as you prepare for the next season of your life. Okay, so that will do it for today's episode. Here are your action items. First off, if you've been considering a move in the future, start the conversation today. Start off by making a pros and cons list, a really great first step to any financial decision. Next, consider the benefits of renting first, before jumping to the conclusion of owning. Oftentimes, there is a strong financial case to renting over owning. However, with all retirement planning decisions, emotions come into play and are very real. For some, uncertainty of renting alone is enough to kibosh that as an option. Lastly, if you own a vacation property, be sure to do your due diligence. Reach out to a planner like myself and a tax accountant to help determine the best way to utilize your primary residence exemption. Okay, so that will do it for today's episode. Make sure you're adding us to all your socials, LinkedIn, Facebook. For all the links and resources discussed, please check out show notes and visit our website. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app. Obviously, please be sure to sign up for that weekly Retiring Canada newsletter if you haven't already. And hey, when it comes to your retirement, don't take chances. Make a plan so you can retire with confidence.
All comments are of a general nature and should not be relied upon as individual advice. The views and opinions expressed in this commentary may not necessarily reflect those of Harbourfront Wealth Management. While every attempt is made to ensure accuracy, facts and figures are not guaranteed. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing or tax advice. Please seek advice from your accountant regarding anything raised in the content of the podcast regarding your individual tax situation. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.